benefits of human-centred IT. I'm Annie Gibbins. Women's Biz Leaders starts now. Women's Biz Leaders brought to you by Women's Biz Global, where each episode we dive into the journeys and successes of remarkable women in business. Joining me now is Katrina Macdermid, co-founder and director of Humanising IT Global, to discuss the future of IT services today. Welcome to the program, Katrina.
Thank you very much, Annie.
So let's talk humanising IT. I love the whole concept because if you're not an IT geek, you often don't know what's happening and you hope it's all going to come back to you exactly as you asked.
Well, it happens to us in IT as well, Annie. So what is humanising IT? It's a few things. We do training, we do consulting, but essentially at its core, humanising IT teaches and educates IT professionals to think about the people that are going to be using the IT service or process. Because traditionally, IT service management, we didn't do that. We really thought about the technology and the processes, not about the people side of it.
So when you're an IT geek, which I'm just going to make an assumption that you are, Katrina, you go through your university learning how to do programs, create things, you know, and I'm assuming you think in frameworks. And so therefore, what do you want? Oh, I know how to build that. And I'm assuming you're like what I've built at the end. Whereas the human side says, no, but this is what I want it to look like and feel like and achieve, so that when I play with it, you know, whether it's a work planner or whatever it is, that it actually meets my personal needs as well as professional needs. Is that a bit what it's like?
Yes and no. So you mentioned the word framework. So if you work in IT, you are pretty much trained or certified in frameworks that we have. There's a few frameworks out there, and those frameworks are very process driven. And because IT needs governance, for example, cybersecurity, so we need processes and guide rails to protect the environment. And also a process might be that I'm sure you've called a service centre or a call centre, probably because something didn't work.
Many times.
many times. And there's a process behind that. So when the ticket's logged, we know how to triage it, we might need to give it to another group, and that's all process driven. And those frameworks do a really good job of that process. But what those frameworks do not do is think about the human experience. And one might question, do processes need to think about experience? We say in Humanising IT, if you create a process that don't consider the human side, people won't follow it. And another thing we say in Humanising IT is that IT professionals are trained in frameworks, but they're not necessarily trained in how to be human-centred.
And we've all got our own skill set, and we need all different types of people thinking to make the dreams work. And so what does that look like in a work environment? Do you have a case study of a company that's come to you and said, you know what, we don't just want you to do the tech, we actually want it to be the whole package. We want our people, we want you to understand our human needs. Do they even know to ask you that when you call it human-centred? Or do they just go and say, we want our people to be happy?
Well, yeah, to be honest,
which is what I'd say.
Absolutely. And so we have, you know, the leaders of big organisations. We work with banks, hotel chains, insurance companies, and invariably the leaders will come to me and say, Katrina, our users are really unhappy with IT. And we need to tell our IT people to be more customer focused.
Yes.
And so that's why we get called in and to help train and coach IT professionals to be more customer focused. Because as I said, those frameworks don't teach us that. And I often say to these leaders, you can't just tell people to be customer focused.
Exactly.
No. It's like telling you to be taller.
Yes.
It doesn't work like that. And so what Humanising IT does, it actually teaches IT professionals in principles of what we call design thinking.
So what's an example of something that has had design thinking, that you go, you know what, I got this scope for this company and we created this human-centred IT program and it really worked?
Yeah, we did a very large piece of work for a very large hotel chain. And we wanted to measure the success of the training and consulting we've done. And so we've done a lot of research on that. And what we found is that people that have completed our training, their customer survey responses were higher than the people that didn't. Also, when you resolve a ticket, was quicker. So there's lots of benefits that we're seeing immediately after people have completed our training, because they're being more empathetic towards the customer, and they're taking that extra step to be more focused on what the human need is.
So what advice do you have for our IT experts or workers in this area watching today? What advice do you have for them to become more human-centred?
Really, you've said it, to be human-centred in everything you do. Because I quite often say, even if you're a developer writing code, when you write an error message, I'm sure Annie, you get this error messaging like, what the heck does that mean?
404 error.
Exactly.
What does that mean?
So we tell the developers, think about, Annie.
I prefer the, oops, you seem to have gone to the wrong place. Please try here.
Exactly. So I think everything that you do as an IT professional impacts a human. And we often forget that as an IT professional. As you said earlier, we're behind the tech or behind the process. But really, IT is there to enable the business and humans to do their job.
So what does the future of human design look like in this space then? Is it really that we stay in two camps and you have the IT department and then you have the, the customer service department, or is it that collaboration, or is it a jobs creep, if you like, of what does it actually mean moving forward?
I think moving forward, and what we're seeing is that IT is coming more into the business side, because we have automation and of course AI these days, and the role of IT is changing, and I think it's for the better. I don't think there will always be an IT department, in my opinion, but what this advance in technology is happening is that it's allowing people to understand more of what is required. I mean, I often say I worked for Qantas Airways. I knew nothing about what the airline did because I was in the back. and so what we're seeing is this shift that we're working towards more of the business and speaking to what they actually need.
Yeah, so it's actually saying I work out the back, but I do need to have that front view to actually see what people are requiring.
Absolutely.
So that my work makes sense.
Absolutely.
Fabulous. I'm just rephrasing for those of you who are tuning in thinking more like me. And so what does leadership in this IT space look like? You're a senior leader in this sector, and so what does that look like? How are you helping and guiding and mentoring people that you work with on these projects? Yeah,
I'm very lucky. I sort of fell into leadership, to be honest. I don't consider myself to be a very good leader, but I think the concept of humanising IT has really hit a nerve with a lot of people, leaders in IT, and leaders, non-leaders also. And I just advocate, what I love doing is helping IT professionals to do better at the job. I mean, they don't like getting perhaps angry calls from you, Annie.
No, I'm sure they don't. It's probably a blocked number.
So, and we also have to empathise with the IT professionals as well. And that's what humanising IT is about. It's thinking systemically about what you do in IT, and not just to the customers, but to your peers in the other groups in IT also.
Now, you made an interesting comment there that, you're not necessarily a great leader, which is really interesting for our viewers thinking, how did she get on the show? Many people actually in their journey to being a leader don't feel like they've kind of got there. It's such a continuum, isn't it? I mean, when do we ever become like the best leader? And so there's so many aspects. What areas have you found the most challenging then in that journey to become a leader in this space?
What has been the most challenging? Great question. I think speaking to the decision makers in large organisations, convincing them that the problem is not their people, the problem is the system. And that's hard. The system of IT is very complex. And quite often companies buy other companies, or they get new systems, and then they don't think about the impact to people in working IT.
Yes.
And that has been my challenge, is convincing the leaders that you've got to think about the technology, don't blame the people.
I think that's a wonderful response, and thank you for being so put on the spot there and being really candid, because I think so many of you will relate to that response of, it's not just being a leader in the sector. You probably go, oh, that's my bread and butter, I'm very comfortable there. It's that when you are a leader in business, it means that you have to step out of that sector because you're working with all those other businesses, departments, and often a changing space. It's quite rapid weird sometimes. That's right. You can have
Exactly.
an acquisition and merger going on and you're like, oh my goodness, I thought we were here and now suddenly we're changing, or no one even knows what they're doing. And so that aspect can be extremely challenging, and you learn a lot about yourself because it exposes those raw elements of insecurity, which we all have, right? Of suddenly like, well, how am I going to convince or not necessarily convince, even work or understand or give my opinion to this other person who is an expert in their area?
Exactly. And sometimes I say that, especially in IT, it is such a complex environment that you can't solve the problem. And sometimes you have to live with the symptoms. And so what you were just explaining then, Annie, yes, when I try and speak to leaders, I'm very mindful of not saying I'm going to solve the problem. Because if you want to solve the problem, it's going to cost you a lot of money. So sometimes the symptoms are okay to fix, and that's why I try to convince them, the leaders.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, sometimes that's it. It's not a total solution. We do sometimes just do permanent fixes until you end up getting to that stage where you've got all the money to throw at it. Or sometimes, you know what, I'm quite happy to do the Band-Aids because new technology is coming across. And in 2 or 3 years, you know what, there's going to be some new platform that I go, oh, thank goodness I didn't invest in this other old platform. I'm now ready to now jump over. So such a fascinating space. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. I kind of love talking IT, even though it's not my space, because I find it just so intriguing, and I have deep respect for the work that you do. Thank you to our viewers for joining us. I hope you've had as much enjoyment as I've had on this episode. Always love you tuning in. Always welcome to reach out and provide comment back to me and recommend future guests on the show. I'll see you again very soon.
You're watching Ticker. We'll have more in just a few minutes.